Welcome back to A Celtic State of Mind. I'm Paul John Dykes, and this afternoon I'm delighted to be joined on this Tuesday afternoon by Liam Carrigan and Lawrence Connolly. We're back, as always. It's 12:30. It's bulletin time. I've already been up at Celtic Park this morning for a slightly delayed wander round Paradise, but I went up there, Lawrence, and the big champions banners are still up in front of the stadium. Everybody you seen kicking about, from stewards to staff, they're all in good spirits, mighty fettle. And that's what football does to you, Lawrence. That's what Celtic does to you. It can actually affect your outlook, your state of mind, your mood, the whole shebang, doesn't it?
Yeah, look, listen, they've given us an absolutely cracking end to the season.
Yeah.
What a way to win it. 90th minute goal. Keep the hope there and snatch it away. It's another double. I think that's as the most successful club in the 20th century, isn't it? So far, European club.
Do we count? Do we do that thing? Do we have the...
I don't know. The papers used to talk about these kind of things a lot. I haven't seen it mentioned much in the papers.
Neither have I. We need to get the decals out. We need to get the old sign writer out, Liam, to change a few of them. Thank you to Briggsy, if you're watching. Briggsy came up, as always, on a Monday, even though it was Tuesday. And he helped us out this morning with a wonder. And he's always one for giving us some Celtic memorabilia. Check that kind of stuff out. Jamesy Forrest testimonial, Feyenoord. Oh, and look, there's a cup final one as well. Thank you to Briggsy. He knows that we've got a wee archive going on in here. That's, for some reason, Liam, annoys the Rangers fans. The fact that we've got the audacity to have books, things that you read, behind us. How was your weekend, mate?
It was good. It was good. Do you know the funny thing? I don't actually remember that much about the game. It's one of them that, I mean, it was not because I was drunk or anything. Don't worry about that. But it was just like I was too uptight to actually enjoy it. And it wasn't until the next day I sat back and watched the highlights that I could really really soak it in and enjoy it. But I was saying in the days leading up to it, I thought we would win comfortably. I thought 3 or 4-0, but in the end, 1-0 last minute goal is actually a hell of a lot more satisfying.
Right, the script writers would have done it that way, Liam, And then, after the game with the celebrations and the walk on, I mean, that was special. Obviously, the Joe Hart emotional element to it as well. But I'm a bit like that myself. Obviously, when I'm watching the games, Liam, I'm watching them with a view to talking about them at half-time, full-time. You're taking some kind of observations out of that. Nothing too tactical on my part, just observations, really. Which is what I would do anyway, in the stadium, and then you're in the supporters' bus going home. You talk to your old fella about it, you make observations, you disagree, and that's what it's all about. But then the emotional element of that, originally when I was doing it on Acsom, I had to kind of reel that back a bit, because when you watch the game after the event and you know the outcome, I think it's easier to analyse the game, because what we've seen, Lawrence, is this kind of train of thought that Rangers were the better side. Celtic were lucky to get the win. The gap's not that wide. And I'm of the view, Lawrence, who is dialing in from the Skylark Bar, but we'll come back to that later because I've now visited it. I'm of the view, I'm quite happy if that's what they actually believe, because I think, great, you're on a completely different planet from me if you actually believe that narrative. What's your take on the kind of like fallout from the game, Lawrence?
Yeah, it was probably the same guys that won, I don't know, what was the November to March Cup. A few seasons
That's
back.
An important one, though, to win, isn't it?
They won the 80 minutes league. And during the game, I always thought we were fairly comfortable. I've seen the kind of stats come out that Celtic, majority of possession, most accurate passing, most passes, and highest XG. That stuff doesn't kind of overly mean a lot to me. I don't want to give a look at it that much, but as a manager, you might want to look at it instead of saying, but with more shots, your shots were garbage, and the next year less than one, you're probably not going to win the game. But, it's another trophy in the cabinet. You'd have to say, Brendan's got his measure. We were unlucky to draw that game at Ibrox. If he wants to keep coming out to talk about, his team were good and they should have won, it's delusional. At the end of the day, he's got to look at the amount of times he's come up against Brendan, and he's managed to pull one draw out of it.
the big thing for me, Lawrence, right? It's the same in any walk of life. If you're looking at that scenario and you're looking at all the outside things that caused your defeat, then you're not looking inward. You're not looking at what you've done wrong as a manager, as a team. And I think Kevin Graham made a point yesterday around the fact that Rangers have approached some of these games with a small club mentality. Now, what I mean by that is that sometimes you're playing a team, Liam, who don't have the quality or the savvy. So what they do is they try and stifle you. And I think that, a big part of what happened at the weekend was that was the approach from Rangers. I didn't see them tearing our defence apart. I didn't see them creating chance after chance and Joe Hart being under pressure. Absolutely didn't see that at all. So, as I say, though, if they want to believe it, I'm happy for that. I'm bringing this up from Jungle Lion, not only because he has the trophy for being the first commenter more often than anybody else on Acsom, but it was a good point, and I think we've probably all seen it. Great to hear Wayne Rooney telling Gary Neville the one club he wished he could have played for was Celtic. Neville was shocked, wasn't he? You see his reaction. He doesn't get it, and he's a Custodian ambassador. Right. Gary Neville was taken aback by this because I think what he was expecting to hear was the stock answer, Liam. Oh, I would have loved to have played for Barcelona or something like that. And wee Rooney just comes out with it. Celtic. As an interviewer, I wish Gary had asked him to expand on that a wee bit, but he just gets on to the next question. Very interesting. I mean, let's not forget the impact Rooney had as a young guy coming in, as a 16-year-old at Everton. But this doesn't surprise me either. I've seen pictures of one of his kids with a Celtic top on. There's an Everton-Celtic thing going on. I've spoken to a few pals of mine who support Everton, and they do say that there is that kind of friendship. There's a shared state of mind, if you like. But always good to hear other players going on about their love or admiration for Celtic, isn't it?
Well, the thing is, most English sort of football players or pundits that actually, treat Scottish football with a bit of respect and bother to do the research will say similar things. I've heard similar at different times from Michael Owen, from Alan Shearer, from Steve McManaman, all guys who had great careers and went on to, become pundits to certain levels as well. And they all said the same thing. We would love to have played at Celtic. And it's great to hear. And these are guys who, particularly in the case of Rooney, that is a guy who could have had his pick of basically playing anywhere. And yet Celtic is the one that he wishes he could have played for. It really is something special.
I do. Some people might say, oh, who cares? I do like this kind of thing. I mean, back in the day, Lawrence, it was the big stars down south asking Celtic to go down and play testimonials. It was a double-edged thing, I think. A, they knew that it would take a tremendous support, so that it would kind of like fill up the coffers back in the day. But the second kind of reason they did it was because of their admiration for the club and the atmosphere we could create as a fan base. So there was that admiration going back to the likes of, Brian Robson, Ryan Giggs, Mark Hughes, guys who had no really prior connection to Celtic Football Club, but they wanted us to go down there. And they did have that kind of passion for what we stand for. So I loved it. I'm delighted. I can't wait for Rooney to come on to Acsom and talk about it.
It'd be great, wouldn't it? I'm pretty sure he was at a game versus the original Rangers, a few rows behind me.
Who was he with that day, Lawrence?
Oh, I'm trying to remember, mate. Jeez.
Oh, you know what? I may be getting that mixed up with the time Shay Given came with Damien Duff. Remember that time?
I believe they were there, mate, but I'm trying to think who Rooney was with. I think they drew one each.
He might have been on his Todd. Or
Could
maybe
have been,
Keane might have been with him, yeah.
See, for the Hughes and Robson things, in football in terms, we were closer to the teams down south, in the level.
We used to go down and beat them.
Yeah. So you've got Rooney coming out and saying that when, there's a bit of gulf now between the wages that we're playing and the standard of football, but he still wishes it. So I think it comes back to the supporters and what makes the club special. I think there's a recognition there, isn't there?
Absolutely.
That's what they want. They want the passion. They don't want the, what was it, Keno said, the front sandwich brigade. It's not what players enjoy playing in front of, is it? You want, Greg Taylor was brilliant, wasn't he? Halfway through the interview. Sorry. See you later. I'm going to go and join that. Yeah. I'd really love to stay and answer your questions, but...
Aye, this is a moment in history and I need to be part of it. Absolutely, Lawrence. I'm going to bring up a couple of the comments here. Some of the other testimonials, one of which we didn't play too well in was the Ian Rush one. I'm just talking from my era. I know that we had earlier. Testimonials for Jack Charlton, Bobby Moore, that kind of stature of player. It was always top quality. I mean, Di Stefano wanted us to go to the Bernabeu and play in his testimonial. Couple of points coming through. Mantis Toboggan, I've got to say, I don't always get the chance to read every single message on the YouTube, but some of the points you've been making over the last couple of weeks have been superb. So thank you very much for your input. Lengthy, well thought out responses to some of the discussion points. And yesterday you were talking about the fact that a lot of people thought we would go into that Scottish Cup final and score a few goals, put them to the sword, and you pointed out that doesn't tend to happen, not just in games between Celtic and Rangers this season, but in cup finals between Celtic and Rangers. In terms of lots of goals, it doesn't tend to happen. We know the famous one, obviously, against the previous incumbents, 7-1 in the League Cup final. Lawrence, you gave me the programme from the Skylark Bar last week. The 4-0 game in the late 60s when Connolly rounded the goalie and all that. Yes, but in recent times it's been pretty tight, so that was a good point. It's not just that we need to strengthen, we need a big clear out as well. Last 3 windows have been poor and we need to undo a lot of that damage first. And we've been talking about the comments between Rooney and Neville. Neville was talking about a couple of weeks ago his involvement in Salford, isn't it? Salford FC, is it? That he is involved with. And he's talking about signing players and the fact that you sign a player and it doesn't work out, that affects your next 3 or 4 transfer windows because you're using some of your budget on a guy and it's not worked out. And he was talking about the mechanics of transfers. As fans, we just think, right, here's a list of 15 guys I want you to move on, and here's 12 players that we should bring in. Not as easy as that. The next comment that comes in isn't because I want Paddy to correct my spelling on the tagline, which has been corrected, thank you, Paddy, but it was to introduce the fact that Paddy Lavery very kindly handed over on that evening that is on the avatar a couple of gifts for you, Lawrence, for your bar. And I can see one of them is on show behind you there. Talk us through it because it is looking good.
Yeah, from Paddy and the Ardoyne boys.
Look at that.
Got a tricolour with the Skylark on it, but also get this.
Beautiful.
Standing a boardroom, mate. Yeah.
That is beautiful. And is there a rule that does not leave the wall when there's been a few swallies had?
Oh, mate, it's not when it's going to get played, that's for sure.
Have you got a banjo in there?
No, leave the banjo for the other side.
Well played.
Paddy and the Ardoyne boys, thank you very much. And
unbelievable.
One time they're over here, they'll get a visit to the Skylark.
Yeah, absolutely.
Hospitality in return.
Yeah, brilliant. Today marks the anniversary. It was on this day back in 1888 that Celtic played and won their first ever game. It was a 5-2 friendly over Rangers. 5-2. There we go.
Fletcher's Hall, Neil McCallum.
Dearie me. Come on.
Yeah.
You started, so I'll let you finish. All right. Aye, Neely McCallum scoring the first goal. I never listed the rest of them, but good effort. Good effort, Lawrence. There is loads to talk about because we're talking about having won the double, moving into the pre-season, Liam. And I said yesterday, you don't get much time as a player, certainly, to enjoy it, and you're right back into it. And you also throw into the mix the Euros as well, don't you? Yeah. What are you looking forward to? Because on a Celtic State of Mind, any Celtic-related interest, we're going to cover the game, right? So I know even Frimpong and Van Dijk are in the Netherlands squad, I believe. So, if there's a game getting played, we're going to cover it, and it'll give us an excuse and an opportunity to talk about Celtic as well. And we're obviously going to have the 12:30 bulletin on a daily basis also. So what are you looking forward to, Liam, from afar?
I'm looking forward to whenever there's a Euros or a World Cup, there's always, I wouldn't say a wee team because there's no such thing as a wee team at the Euros, I don't think. But like, there's always a country that comes from nowhere and kind of surprises you. And you look at their players and you think, God, there's a couple of them that are probably still in Celtic's price range, Yeah. One to watch this time, I think, and it's a shame because Scotland are playing them, but I think Hungary could surprise a few people. I think they could do some damage. They ripped England apart. I think it was about a year ago at Wembley, and they look like when they're in the mood, they're dangerous. I'm also interested to see what just forgetting about the Celtic thing for a minute, I am very interested to see what kind of Germany team turns up, because I have this kind of logic in my head that I think they're going to win the Euros, because Germany are never bad for more than 2 tournaments in a row. If you look at it historically, it's like rubbish, win, rubbish, win, rubbish, win, and like, but they've been bad at the last Euros and the last World Cup, and it's like Germany are long overdue to do something. So I've got a wee fiver on them to win the tournament.
No, by the way, I think what happens there is that when there's something wrong, they fix it. I think that's a big thing, Liam. Whereas in Scottish football, it's going to be brilliant that we're at another tournament, under Stevie Clarke's second finals. But it became the norm for Scotland not to be involved at this stage, and nobody fixed it. And that was the issue. I mean, you're talking there about Germany, there's an issue, let's go and resolve that. We never did it. We just let it fester and get worse. Parkhead Boy, I've already been pulled up about my spelling on the tagline by Paddy, and now Parkhead Boy comes in and is having a dig about my timekeeping here. Apparently, Radio Schneid started late last night because of Taylor Swift competition. What's your excuse? Maybe we should run a competition, and then at least then we've got an excuse. But at this moment in time, no excuses, apologies. I'm going to blame Lawrence for it because he was the last of the party, wasn't he, Liam? We were in first. We were in first. We'll say it's Lawrence's fault. Lawrence, I'm going to come to you here because, I mean, I concentrate on Celtic, right? Very rarely do I have an opportunity to tap into, the goings-on elsewhere. And I've said this before. It's one of the reasons why the interest levels I've got in the English game, for example, have diminished over the years because I'm just so focused on what's happening in the world at Celtic. But what I will do is I'll follow Excel's, and I've always done that, right back to Brian McClare. Charlie going to Aston was maybe a wee bit too early for me. I was too young to really care all that much, although I remember my dad talking about it. But, Brian McClare going to Man United, I would then follow his career in the pages of the shoot in the match as it was back then, Roy the Rovers, etc. And you would watch Football Focus and all this. So there's a player who's going to potentially play at this Euros, an ex-Celt that I'm very, very interested in seeing. And I would love to see him play. I really would. And just before we came on, I says to Liam, can you remember the World Cup where Brazil took Ronaldo? Not comparing the two players. Brazil took Ronaldo to the World Cup finals, and I think it was 94, Liam. And Ronaldo was a kid. He was just a kid, but he was a registered player. He was basically just a hamper boy, and it was all about getting him his experience to see how the senior pros prepared for games, etc. Well, Ben Doak is in the provisional Scotland squad, and you look at his career to date, 18 years of age, 2 appearances for Celtic, 10 appearances for Liverpool, and that would have been even more of it had it not been for some niggling injuries and a serious injury as well. And he's got this call-up, and it's bold, Lawrence, because how often in the past have we watched an international team that just gets really boring and tedious in terms of the selection? I think it's a bold selection, and I would love to see him get some game time because I think there's a lot of people out there who don't actually appreciate how good this kid is.
Which wingers in Scotland would keep him at the team? It's him or James Forrest on the right-hand side for me. I think it's as simple as that. I remember his debut, and after watching it, I said, look, for me, he'd never be out of my match day squad. He'd be playing every week after that, either off the bench or some minutes, just to try and retain him. But unfortunately, it didn't work out for us. We wish him the best down south. It'd be great to see him play, especially if we get any kind of add-on in there. But yeah, best of luck to him. But it'd be better for us, obviously, if he'd stayed. Hopefully, is something that kind of the club are able to do is retain talents like Danny Kelly. Obviously, I don't know if he's signed his new contract yet, but there's a bit of interest in him. So it's a problem we've got, bringing through players and also retaining them. Because, I think Hepburn went to Bayern Munich. I don't know how he's doing over there. Obviously, Doak to Liverpool. Angelini down to Watford, wasn't it? Davy Hayes' grandson.
Another move. He's since went to Brentford.
Yeah, so it's a definite problem we face that we need to find a way of bleeding these guys and keep them up here.
Yeah, the big thing for me, we started off talking about Wayne Rooney, who always wanted to play for Celtic. I heard somebody else saying that back in the 80s, and it turned out completely differently. But Wayne Rooney always wanted to play for Celtic. Ben Doak has been described as being the Scottish equivalent of Wayne Rooney. Liam. I would love to see him play. I don't know if he's doing the old Ronaldo thing, Stevie Clark, where it's all about experience for him. But to throw him into one of these games and just unleash him, I'd love to see it.
I mean, the thing is, every time a former Celtic player, even one who only played a couple of games like Doak, whenever they go to a big tournament and do some damage, it reflects well on us, and it also means that we can start asking a bit more for any players that we sell. It's highly likely, though I hope not, that Matt O'Reilly's going to go in the summer. But hopefully it's after he's made the Denmark squad and Denmark have done something in that tournament. I mean, imagine if Matt O'Reilly, just, Fantasy Island stuff here, imagine if he scored the winner against England. Be like, okay, that'll be 60 million, please,
I've seen some of the headlines, Liam, and they can pick a figure out of the sky really when it comes to it. I think we all know that in certain leagues players move, and we call it the English tax when it comes to English players moving, and Harry Maguire for 80 million and all that kind of stuff. When it comes to a top quality Celtic player, often you look at other transfer fees, and Fabrizio Romano back in October said that if he was to leave, it would be for a record. The record, as we know, is 25 million quid. But that 25 million pound we got for Tierney, certainly, Lawrence, was a few years ago. I think Matt O'Reilly, for me, has proven to be, and I've said it a few times now, one of the finest players in a Celtic jersey over the last 20 years. I really think that. And I think there's a ceiling to this player that it's higher than anybody else in the squad. And previously, I thought Hatate had the highest ceiling. But I do believe now that this season has kind of flipped that in Matt's favour. I would love to keep him, but I totally understand that sometimes a cycle comes to a point where all parties are wanting a deal to happen. I mean, let's not kid ourselves. If Celtic are offered upwards of £25 million for anybody, they're going to be interested, Lawrence. I want to turn off and switch off for that. Hopefully nothing happens over the pre-season. I think that would be better than going out and making a big buy. It would be better than any kind of marquee signing you could make. But if there's an offer on the table and O'Reilly decides to, take it and he wants to go, it's best for all parties that he goes. I mean, and that's not a lack of ambition as a Celtic supporter. It's a realisation that it's probably not healthy to keep a player if their wishes are to go elsewhere.
But listen, if he's set and going, I think he'd leave with everyone's best wishes. And I think it'd take north of 30 million to move him. He's been absolutely outstanding for us. What is it? Something between goals and assists, 35 this season. Absolutely phenomenal signing for us. I think we should try and build the side around him next season. But if he wants to leave, I think it'd be forward to kind of keep him here and end up with an unhappy player, especially as part of a promise to players when they sign us. Come here, put yourself in a short window, win trophies, get some Champions League experience, and then get yourself a bigger move. So I think, the only time we tried to keep unhappy players was the season after 9 in a row, and that didn't work out for us. French Eddie, there was a bid come in for him, he wanted to leave, and we decided to keep him. Didn't work out well. So if Mark fancies moving on, good luck to him. I think he's been absolutely outstanding. What an ambassador for the club. And he's probably really lucky that he get a chance after the cup final last few minutes. You want to talk about that? Tackle coming in.
Yeah.
If he hadn't been quick, that could have been it. No Euros for him, no move. But absolutely phenomenal player for us. And it'll be a really sad day to lose him, but you can see him want to move on. And perhaps as he sees it test himself at a higher level, the only thing that maybe keep him, we've got 8 Champions League games.
Yes.
Now, it's not the 4, it's 8, potentially up to 10. So players maybe are looking at it and go, well, where am I going to be moving to that I would be getting 10 games of that standard? Hopefully Matt looks at it that way, but, time will tell. I don't think he's going to play his whole career for Celtic, unfortunately. But whether it's this season or next season, I think he'll move on. And I think it's definitely going to be north of 30 million. I think it will be new Scottish transfer record when he moves.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing that Lauren said there, Liam, and I want to pick up on it, was that kind of last-ditch desperate tackle from Lundstrom. O'Reilly was able to evade it. But what you're looking at there, what you're putting on the line, by diving in there and to try that, for that to be the last act of vengeance in a Rangers jersey, what you're putting on the line there, you're putting the guy's potential transfer and therefore his future career on the line, his appearance at the Euros on the line, all these kind of things. And it's easy to forget it because it didn't become a flashpoint in the game, Liam. Lundstrom didn't make the contact only because O'Reilly jumped out the way. He was able to at that stage of the game as well, where I'd like to see an outfield player who's played more minutes than Matt O'Reilly this season in Scottish football. The guy has played a lot of football. He must be running an empty in a lot of these games, yet he was able to evade that challenge. But it was a challenge in a long line of other points that seemed to have gone under the radar, Liam. And the only thing that is getting focused on, and we didn't talk much about this yesterday, there was other things came up yesterday. We never really got a chance to dig into this, Liam. The only thing that seems to be focused on is the disallowed goal, right? And again, as I said earlier on, I don't look to any other kind of sources of information from another football club, but sometimes it's hard to ignore when your timeline is engulfed with this kind of stuff. People actually believe they've been hard done by, right? So we've got like a resident ref in our Acsom team, Sean, and I asked the question because in the back of my mind, I'm thinking to myself, right, let's just say, for argument's sake, Liam, that Greg Taylor shoved the Rangers player. I says to Sean, okay, if that happens, most referees appreciate that there's going to be pushing and shoving, right? And they don't really, unless it gets completely out of hand, and then you'll see the ref delay in the corner and going into the 6-yard box, normally pulling out one player from each team and giving them a kind of ticking off Liam. That's how they normally deal with it, right? Even if Greg Taylor was pushing or holding or grabbing or whatever, and it's been put out there by Clement, it's been picked up by Super Ali, as some like to call him, right? And they're just running with it. But I says to Sean, okay, if that was a push or a shove or a grab or whatever, right? What happens? Because the ball's not in play. So that it would never be a penalty anyway, Liam. So the ref could go over to Greg Taylor and say, right, that's a bookable offence, right? And he could book him. But he wouldn't give him a penalty. He wouldn't give Rangers a penalty. So they're going on and on and on about this disallowed goal. And what they're using is the Greg Taylor incident as to, that was an incident prior, so it should have been a penalty, right? And I listened, and I'm going to have to put this out there because this is on mainstream media channels. McCoist, this is a direct quote from McCoist, right? And this is going out there, and people are just believing this nonsense. Jeff, I don't know who he was talking to. Scandalous, honestly, but I have come to expect it. Can you believe that a Rangers-minded pundit is saying he has come to expect Rangers not getting a decision? The incompetence of our officials is nothing short of ridiculous. It is bordering on embarrassing, he says, to tell you the truth. They disallowed the goal for a shove. Now, this is where it gets really funny. Okay, there may be a little shove. Liam, you're listening to this, right? So he's admitted there has been a shove on the goalie, right? Okay, so it gets disallowed, Ali. That's how it works. And I can understand that. But they go back 2 seconds, here we go, and they've got to give a penalty. The guy has his arms wrapped around the guy. He doesn't even know who he's talking about here. He's just calling everybody the guy, who eventually does the little shove. So that's like a big tax case, wee tax case, big shove, little shove. It is just total incompetence, Jeff. But we've come to accept it, and that is the way it goes. What a load of nonsense, Liam.
Well, see, the big problem here, and one, you shouldn't have cheerleaders. You should have analysts commenting on these games. And, people like McCoist, like Kenny Miller, like Chris Boyd, they are Rangers cheerleaders. Now, there's an audience for that. It's Rangers TV. It's not Sky. It's not TalkSport. It's not mainstream media. It's club media, right? But the problem is that we live, well, I don't, but you guys live in a country where this sort of thing is just accepted. It's not challenged. And that's what really annoys me, because if you have like a Chris Sutton saying something like that, but in terms of Celtic should have had a penalty, you would have all of these pundits challenging him on it and saying, "No, wait a minute, hold on." Whereas these Rangers guys are allowed to just spout their utter mince,
unchallenged,
and nothing is challenged. And it's the same on Radio Clyde. You get the phone in, and again, what is the point of having panelists if they're not going to say to these Rangers fans, "Wait a minute, son, that's not actually what happened"? They just allow them to write their own narrative. And I'm going to use an extreme example, but it was Joseph Goebbels who came up with the idea of repeat a lie often enough, it becomes a truth. And that seems to be the entire basis for modern Scottish media when it comes to Rangers.
Yeah.
Listen, I've got to say, I agree with McCoy. That was incompetence by the officials. Right. It's 2 penalty incidents. Kyogo taken out by Balogun, kicks his leg as he's about to play the ball. It's a penalty. Edge of the 6-yard box. Hand out at the side, ball off his hand for Davies. It's a penalty. Neither, as far as we know, went to VAR. So I can only put it down to incompetence. That's McCoy's. I'd have to agree with there. And Brendan Rodgers has previously called John Beaton incompetent. So, yeah, I need to agree with him as well.
Why not? No, but someone in the comments going to bring it up is saying, "Oh, why are we going on about why we're arguing about it?" The only reason, Danny, is just to highlight it and challenge it because it's not being challenged. Stop arguing.
Listen, there's a couple of other things. What about Diamande kicking me?
Terrible.
It's a sending off. You're like kicks in the stomach. You're like, where's VAR there? It's violent conduct.
Well, what I noted yesterday, to be fair, I don't even know why I said Goldson because I know he's injured, but I said Goldson. I meant Balogun. Was that the Kyogo was taken out, and I've seen all the different gymnastics, the mental gymnastics as to why that shouldn't be a penalty, but it wasn't even spoken about. The Davis handball is a stonewaller, Lawrence, like you say, an absolute stonewall penalty, and again we get one. We've got one replay of that in live time. One replay of it. It wasn't spoken about. And I said at the game, and I don't know if you agree with this, Liam. I said that sometimes you get a sense of what the VAR are telling the ref through what the commentator says, because the commentator's listening in, right? And quite quickly they'll tell, "Oh, something's happening here," and straight away the commentator's talking about natural body position. So you're actually thinking to yourself, the VAR's telling the ref, "Oh, it's okay, it's natural body position. The ball's ricocheted off his arm." Because the commentator is more or less echoing what he's hearing from the VAR team. Absolute nonsense when you look at it, especially on the still. Lundstrom on O'Reilly could have been an absolute leg breaker. And the goal that was disallowed was a disallowed goal due to the shove on Joe Hart. Can he do that to the goalie? When the ball is in play, Diamande, a double kick on Idah. There was also a kind of smaller one where Sterling sat on Greg Taylor, just sat on him, and Taylor couldn't get his face out the mud. He's just sitting on him like a deck chair. So, in terms of all that, what I would say, Lawrence, in terms of incompetence, what a great decision it was by Nick Walsh to let play continue when Bernardo was scathed or attempted to be scathed in the lead up to the goal. That was a good decision.
Totally. Listen, I know the beginning of the show was saying, one of the guys had said, 3 bad windows, but if it wasn't for Bernardo and Idah, they turned the game, they won the game for us. Obviously, Brendan said he hopes they could bring Idah back up. And listen, Bernardo, what drive he had, and he get a fair amount of movement on that ball. People are saying, "Oh, keeper should have done better," but I think it's the movement on the ball that's thrown him in. And he's made the room and he's slotted it away. But yeah, I think that's kind of what Rangers were reduced to there. Thought they were knackered. They were chasing shadows, trying to kick out. Well, if Clement really wants to look at something, you should maybe ask yourself, why did Ratskin just go in and try and take the player? Why didn't you think I'm not getting the ball? Why don't I mark him and try and close the space he's going to try and break into here? Stop the attack that way, rather than just trying to bring a guy down, which was a pretty poor attempt at bringing anyone down. But yeah, great drive from Bernardo. And hopefully he's a guy we keep around as well.
I want to talk about that, Lawrence, because if you mention the name Adam Idah, Liam, what I've seen on the socials, on the comment section on this show, and probably within the Acsom contributor list as well, most people saying, go and buy the guy. the impact he's had, big game. He seems like a big game player. You know, I'm sitting thinking to myself, I'd love to see him in the Champions League. I want him to take that next step, right? We know he's played international football. He's came to Celtic, and you're like, right, how's he going to adapt from second-tier English football? Brilliant. He's done it excellently well. He steps up to take penalties when it's been one of the biggest issues we've had all season at Hibs. I remember after that game talking about turning points, and people like the performance was dreadful. But at the end of the season, you can look back on some of these moments, Liam. We weren't great at Easter Road that night, but we needed a player to really just step up, and that's what Idah did. Then you had the performance against Motherwell, the goal that looked as though it would be the winner at Ibrox. You know, he plays his part in the semi-final. He's brilliant against Kilmarnock when we win the league. He was brilliant again when he came on. I want to start off with Adam Idah. I've already praised him for his running. He's got a real hard work ethic. I mean, twice I've seen him taking the ball into the corner and doing the old Dembele thing where it's like, right, I'm just going to shield this ball. You know, you can foul me if you want or try and out-muscle me. And he's young. He's got that youth on his side. I don't care if he was Norwich's third choice player. I really don't, Liam. And there's plenty of people slagged him off when we signed him. But in terms of what he's done, I think we keep him. We pay the money, we keep him.
Yeah. You know, the debate in January, which we had, I think we had it on here, was should we have got Idah or Miovski from Aberdeen? We're now in a position where I think we could and should sign both. I think they would both give us something different to what Kyogo does. And as well as Idah being, I think, a very good striker who's only 23 years old, so is going to get even better, I think that also he would make Kyogo a better player. Because how often does that happen, that you sign a new player for that position and you get this sudden rejuvenation from the player who was already there?
Yeah.
I really think that is another example of that would be Tony Ralston. You know, he was Liam Scales is another one. You know, we sign other players for those positions, and then those guys suddenly start playing really well. So I think that would be the way to go. Miovski and Idah for me would be great. Still has the potential, but I think he would benefit from a loan similar to what Kwon had this season. Go to a top half of the Scottish League team. Somebody like, you know, St Mirren or Aberdeen, and you know, maybe that could even be a sweetener for Aberdeen. Say to them, right, we'll give you, I don't know, 3 or 4 million for Miovski, and you can have O for 18 months.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the sort of situation that we need.
Yeah, no, see the thing with that, I think you're right. I don't believe we've managed that side of things all that well in the past, Liam, where we've had players that are surplus to requirements, non-contributing players, as I call them. They're not playing football for us. It just, you know, if you can't get them to a team permanently, maybe due to the contract they've got and the wages they're on, use them as make-weights, use them as loan players, that kind of thing. And I do like the idea, not always possible, I like the idea of loaning to a fellow Scottish club so they can damage your opposition. They're not going to damage you because they won't play in the games against Celtic. So I do like that idea. And I'm a big fan of Idah. I think that, again, Rodgers could develop him even further. Gordon Coney, welcome back to the show. You're watching on YouTube, Afternoon Acsom. I love that avatar, by the way. Brendan with his bag of cans and his Gucci belt. Afternoon Acsom, but he's only got one trophy. You're going to have to update that, mate. I'm hoping the rumours are true about the board pushing to make Idah permanent. I think the lad will flourish under the guidance of Rodgers. No-brainer, sign him up. Yep, that's what we're talking about, and we tend to agree with that. James, we've also got Jonathan coming in. Was a clear foul end of. That's the foul, of course, on Joe Hart. I agree with that also. The Urban Culture comes in also in the YouTube channel to say we need 4 stars and about 6 of the fringe players to step up for games after our European matches. Callum can't be there forever. I think that's a good point, Lawrence, because we're talking about an increase in European games. Callum McGregor, you know, he's had a couple of injuries over the last few seasons, but when fit, he plays. Matt O'Reilly, when fit, he plays. You do need a group of players. And I think that group of players are your Tony Ralston, the likes of Liam Scales, that type of player who, after maybe, you know, you're getting your couple of games a week, Lawrence, you can bring them in if you're playing at home against Ross County, for example, no disrespect, whereby you can bring some of your kind of squad players in. I think they're vital for that. I would like to see improvements on, left back, left centre half. I would also like to see a new winger coming in, a new goalie, etc. But these guys, I would keep them at the club because they do contribute.
No, without doubt. I mean, you'd be hard pushed to say Liam Scales wasn't one of the top contributors this season. When it was a position we were struggling for, 2 big money signings, neither of them worked. It gets a lot of criticism. Do I think he's going to be long-term Celtic starting centre half? No. But what a season the boy had. What an attitude he's shown to make that jersey his own. Listen, he might step up a level next season again, but we definitely need people like him and with the attitude they display, because that's something him and Tony Ralston have got in common, isn't it? It's a love of the club and an attitude that they're going to try and make that jersey there. They're going to give it their all, for any minutes they get in the park. I think we'll get big changes coming up, with the extra Champions League games. Obviously, Joe Hart's left, we need a keeper. And Brendan, since the start of the season, has been talking about need a quality. We're going to need to bring in 4 or 5 quality players. It's a lot of players to bring in at one time, and that's when I'm thinking, if we keep Idah and keep Bernardo, at least that's 2 players that are already bedded in. Mm-hmm. They've shown they can contribute to us. You get Scales and Ralston. Obviously Tony counts as club trained for Europe, but they've shown they know how to get the job done in Scotland. They can function as part of this team. You go back to Strachan's team, Caldwell and McManus at centre half. I don't think either of them would be in the top 10 centre halves I've seen at Celtic, but last 16 of the Champions League with them. So sometimes it's about making a team, isn't it? Making that unit.
2 seasons on the bounce, mate. That's the thing.
Yeah.
2 seasons on the bounce under Gordon Strachan. Liam Scales says Joe Hamilton, our big Italian defender from Ireland. And we did go as far as creating what the vision would look like if Liam Scales was from Italy. And ladies and gentlemen, here he is. It's Leo Scalacci. That's what he would look like, and that's what he plays like, Joe. And I just think guys like that are key. They're key to the squad game. You can improve, I think, on a guy like Liam Scales, particularly looking ahead to the European games. But as a squad player, as part of that core group of maybe 18 players, Liam Scales, Tony Ralston, even Stephen Welsh, maybe to a lesser degree, they're going to be key with the increase in European football next season. James Kirwan, more talk about the disallowed goal than the handball incident. Yeah, it hardly got a mention. And that's why, we talk about mainstream media versus kind of fan or alternative media, Liam. And you've seen it. You've seen it over a number of years and how things have changed. And there's a trajectory on both sides. There's a downward trajectory in terms of the mainstream circulation. There's an upward trajectory in relation to the audience of alternative or fan media. And at some point, there's a coming together. And you think about influence. You think about, right, if you're talking about it in that sense, a Celtic State of Mind today, this show that we are on right now will move us over 16 million views on YouTube. There's no other channel on the planet other than Celtic FC's channel that is dedicated to Celtic that has had 16 million views on YouTube, Liam. Fan alternative media is influential and it has to be discussed. These things have to be put out there.
Yeah, and the thing is that what you're seeing now with, as we talked about before, the cheerleaders particularly for Rangers, is an attempt to try and rebalance from the mainstream media, to try and lean more into this sort of fan media narrative. But we don't want that. And to be honest, most fair-minded Rangers fans that I know don't want it either. They want a Chris Sutton type. They want somebody who is one of them, but who is not going to just be a sycophant. Big Sutton is a Celtic fan. It makes no bones about it. Loves getting ripped into Rangers when we beat them. But he's also one of our biggest critics when he thinks we deserve it. And that's the way it needs to be.
Yeah, aye, it does. And he's been really brutal at times towards Celtic. And it's him that calls out other cheerleaders for other clubs. So I do think you need to have that level of approach, that balance. I want to talk about domination because, sorry, Lance, on you go, mate.
See in the media, what are they going to write about Celtic doing a double, winning breaking a number of records when they've done that. Clermont's pitiful record against Brendan Rodgers, or they could write about, Rangers were really the better team and that there was a goal disallowed. I think it's, they're trying to control the narrative here. But in reality, if you're a Rangers fan, you've got to be asking questions about Clermont. Every time he comes up against Brendan Rodgers, he's left wanting. And it looks like he's resorting to long ball tactics against this. He's not trying to play football, is he? He's kind of tactics you could expect against a bottom six team against this. A team that know that they can't know football is. What we'll do is we'll play for free kicks, corners, and some long balls. And I think they're going to have to be better than that if they ever want to have a chance of winning the league.
Well, I'll take that point and I'll run with it, Lawrence, because what I seen at the weekend, I thought Liam Scales really, again, the usual committed performance. But what I seen at the weekend was Carter Vickers playing an absolute blinder. Again, something that might go under the radar. I thought he was brilliant. Can you imagine, Liam, having someone of that same stature playing alongside him? Because I know they had a great partnership and understanding, him and Carl Starfelt, right? But I don't think Starfelt was on the same level as Carter Vickers in terms of quality. They had a great partnership, a brilliant partnership. The stats will tell us that, right? But I don't think since Carter Vickers came to Celtic, he has had a like-for-like partner in the centre of that defence. And if we go out and get one of them, and it's going to cost a lot of money, of course it is, then you see a completely different beast. You don't really see that weakness on the left-hand side that kind of permeates Scales into Taylor and all this kind of stuff. Hit the back post. Aberdeen did it. Not a great side. They were sitting ninth in the league. They did it twice against us in the semi-final with the Scottish. So I'm looking forward to that. And yes, it's a priority. The goalkeeper's a priority as well because Joe Hart's left the building. But we have got to celebrate the success of Liam Scales, absolutely. But also realise we've got to do better.
Yeah, I mean, I would say the same for Greg Taylor. Greg Taylor is one of the hardest working players we have. I thought he had a very good game at the weekend. And I think he's one of those guys, it's kind of fashionable to kind of put him down when the team's not doing well generally, but he's always putting 100% in, always getting in about it. But again, there should be a step up in quality. I think there's a place for him and for Scales as part of the squad, because I would have no hesitation about playing them in a standard Scottish League game. And same goes for Tony Ralston. But you want upgrades on those. The thing about Carter Vickers is that for as long as he's been at Celtic, every time we talk about our starting lineup for a game, it's always Carter Vickers and somebody. There's never any question of Carter Vickers not starting if he's fully fit. And that is bad for the team, but it's also bad for him because, as I mentioned before, having somebody like, for example, Idah or Miovski at Celtic next season will make Kyogo a better player. And likewise, having a centre-back who is as good as him, potentially, will make CCV a better player as well, I believe.
Yeah, and he's not had that luxury. He really hasn't had that luxury. I mean, I don't know if, you look at Mike Norowski, for example, and write him off, because I'm kind of the view, Lawrence, now looking at the salvageability, there you go, of the summer transfer window and what we can actually glean from that. Now, Bernardo, like Idah, if he's available and they're not asking for a fortune, and by fortune, I mean over 7 million quid, because they're talking 6.5. But the 6.5, I believe, would have the loan fee deducted from it as well, and the loan fees around 1.5. So the deal could be done, it could be struck. But beyond Bernardo, when you're looking at that summer transfer window, you're looking at guys like maybe Nawrocki. Can we salvage a player from him? Is he a ready-made player that's maybe had issues with adapting to the intensity of the game and the training regime? He's picked up a few injuries. It's been a bit stop-start. Is that somebody that could step up, Lawrence? Or, I mean, Lagerbielke seems to have been written off. He's not going to get a look in. He was one of the suits on the park at the weekend. But what about Nawrocki? Does he still have a future?
I think so. Yeah, Brendan said the problem is keeping him fit, isn't it? Lagerbielke, I think, we're going to sell him before we get another injury. What season for injuries? So I think Lagerbielke goes, but Nawrocki, when he's been fit, has looked good. His distribution's good. good bit of pace about him, adds a decent amount of height to our defence, which we do lack. So, and I don't think anyone's going to really come in for bids with him. There hasn't been rumours about him moving. At least Laga Bielka, we know there's people interested in him, and he could have been away in the winter transfer window. I think you need to look and salvage something for him. It still wouldn't stop me getting out and looking for a starting centre half that's better than Carter Vickers if possible. You need to up your level, don't you?
Yeah.
I think, you've got to try with Rocky, salvage what you can from it. The summer transfer window, some of the players that were brought in, Kwani was never going to replace Iwata or McGregor. Not that kind of money. He done okay at St Mirren, fell away kind of towards the end of the season. But you'd be expecting a fair clear out, wouldn't you? Of players that have come in.
We're going to have to. We're going to have to, Lawrence, because I go back to the comments in December. Brendan wants to run with 25. Now, when all the loanees
that might
come
change
back,
though with the extra Champions League games. They might up it with the extra Champions League game. And the only thing I'd qualify that with saying, listen, we didn't think Idah was going to be the signing, did we? Because we knew we had money in the bank and we're all expecting the off-scare, a big money signing. Would they have any more impact than Adam Idah did for us?
he couldn't have done any more.
The recruitment team's
except that penalty against Hearts.
Yeah, but you know what I mean. They've done a decent job there.
Yeah.
And although we've got loads of money, if they can find, guys that maybe cost less, ideal bargains like that, because he seems to fit Brendan's style of playing. You touched on it against Kilmarnock when the day we sealed the league. Absolutely outstanding. And he's young, he's only going to get better. So, yeah, there'll be a bit of clear out, but you get guys like Bosun Law will come back. Well, Matt O'Reilly done okay after leaving that league, coming up here. Law was good down there. So, as much as there's a clear out, we don't want to look kind of past players that we've got. I think Dane Murray's back from injury, signed a new contract. He looked okay a few games under Ange and then seemed to drop out. 2
bad injuries he's had, isn't he?
Yeah, I think what we are missing is getting that link between the reserves or the under-21s or whatever in the first team, isn't it?
100%.
How do we develop the players? Because there's talent there. Other clubs have seen it. Doak's an example. Hepburn, Angelini.
And there's going to be a facility there. Drove past it today. It looks as though there's loads of development happening up at Barrafield. If you want to buy a Barrafield t-shirt, they're on the shop underneath. There's a link underneath this video. Why not? But, I get what you mean, right? There's a lot of loanees coming back. But I think most of them will be surplus to requirements because you're looking at guys like Haksabanovic, Mikey Johnson, Liam Shaw. These guys are all out on loan at the moment. But some of the players you've mentioned, I think Lawal, he comes back, you loan him back out. You then loan him back out to a higher level than he's just played. That's what I would do with a player like Lawal. I was watching the celebrations after the game, Liam, right? And there was a great shot, and it was all the Japanese boys together. Don't know if you've seen it. Kobayashi obviously suited up. And I was looking at it thinking, right, so the reason they're all there is the fact that Ange had this intricate knowledge of the Japanese game. And I've said time and time again, the 2 guys with the biggest knowledge on Japanese football in the world of Celtic at that time is Liam Carrigan and Ange Postecoglou. And we've spoken about our imports. One of them, it didn't work out for, and he left the club, Ideguchi. So we're left with 5. And, you've got Kyogo in and out the side, but I think, 19 goals, not a bad return. Is he perfectly suited to the way Brendan plays? Probably not. But it's good to have different, a different dynamic and different styles of strikers. So if we bring in someone like Idah, who really suits the way Brendan wants to play, and you've got Kyogo as a different type of weapon, I think that's great. You've got Hatate, whose season was derailed through injury. Don't think he's quite got back up to his peak yet, but I would expect it to happen next season. And you've got Maida, who's just become probably, an unlikely hero amongst the Celtic fans. The guy is a cult hero. He's sensational. He would play every week for me. I've always said it. Then you've got Iwata, a player that you and I spoke about time and time again when he wasn't getting a game. He's coming in. He's got a run of games. And you've got Kobayashi. So I guess what I'm asking you here, Liam, is what does the future hold for these 5 guys? Because I think we've all written Kobayashi off. There's more of a question mark around Iwata now. Is he going to fit? is he going to fit the bill, particularly if Bernardo comes in?
I think with Iwata, a lot is going to depend on how we set up for the Champions League. If we decide to go with 2 holding midfielders, then he's definitely in there for me. If we want to even put him in as the single holding midfielder and play KILMARNOCK further forward, that is also an option. There's definitely ways to fit Iwata into the team, but it's going to involve a bit of rejigging. But I think he's an excellent player to have in the squad, and I think he's got a long-term future at Celtic.
It'll be interesting.
That's Kobayashi is unfortunately, I think, going to be out the door imminently. It's a shame, it really is, but he's just not. I mean, we don't see him in training every week. I don't doubt that his commitment is probably there, but it's just whatever he's showing in training is not enough for Rodgers to even consider putting him on the bench. And it's sad when you think that we did have defensive injuries at different points this season and Kobayashi never got a look in. That really tells you just how far out the picture he is. Idah for me is one of the most important players at the club at the moment. We saw how much of a boost it was to get him back before that final derby, and how terrified James Tavernier is of him. I mean, that speaks volumes. And Kyogo is, I think, probably the most naturally gifted of all the players at the moment, but I think Hatate has the potential to surpass him in the future. I think Kobayashi's out the door, but for the rest of the Japanese boys, the future is bright, I think.
Good. And remember, we want to talk to you about a couple of other Japanese players that could sign for Celtic, because we made the mistake, Liam, after Nakamura, and I know Mizuno was there, but we just didn't tap into the market for, how long was it? 16 years before, Kyogo came in the building. So before we kick off the new season, I think it would be interesting to get your take on 4 or 5 players we could have looked at in the Japanese market. Lawrence, we were joined up at Celtic Park this morning for a wander, and I don't know if this is kind of your era, the Kevin McDermott Orchestra. Can you remember them? Signed to Island Records back in the 1980s. Kevin had previously been with a band called the Suede Crocodiles. How good is that? What's a name for a band? The Suede Crocodiles, back in 1983, releasing independent singles and all that kind of stuff. He's still going strong, and he's got a great Celtic story. So he was up today. We're talking about his new single, and we took a wee wander around the park as well. And he's actually given us, he promised us some time ago that he was going to give us a denim jacket, not for Chris McElwain double denim, but to auction off or raffle off for wee Jamie Tierney. So we're now in possession of that jacket. It's a tour jacket with embroidery, Kevin McDermott Orchestra with the Island logo. It's Levi's, like proper 1 of 6 in existence. And he handed that over this morning. So a big shout out to Kevin. And all going well, that will be on the channel for 6 o'clock tonight. The Wander Round Paradise, normally on a Monday, but it was delayed due to the public holiday. So please tune in for that. Tomorrow, I'm in Glasgow filming the first episode of our brand new show. It's called This is Acsom, from Barrafield to the Barrowlands. And we're filming it just behind the Barrowlands in Barra's Art and Design. And the special guest will be revealed, but we do have an ex-Celt who is joining us for episode 1. And every week on Friday night, that show will be uploaded to the channel with a very special ex-Celt or someone with a Celtic state of mind. So looking forward to that as well. Tune in on Friday. If you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of this free content. Give us a big thumbs up. And a few more pointers before we go. Mantis Toboggan again. Little shove or big shove, both are fouls. Correct. Absolutely correct. And why doesn't anyone challenge the people in the mainstream who's actually trying to say, oh, just a little shove? You're all right to do that.
Just, it was probably one of the least contentious decisions in that match. Yeah. You could easily pick half a dozen decisions that were more contentious than that.
And that's the one that's been focused on.
That's the one it's focused on.
I know. It was the celebrations followed by it's been chopped off. James Kerwin, the amount of money needed to make Celtic compete at Champions League should be in the region of 40 to 50 million quid. And you've got teams you're competing against with 40 and 50 million pound players on the bench. It's a tough one, but we can do better than we have done in recent years, and hopefully we will strengthen the side sufficiently to do that. It's been an absolute pleasure. If you want to come and see us at the same venue that we're recording in tomorrow, then we will be there with Alan Thompson, Stilian Petrov and Jackie McNamara at Glasgow Barras Art and Design on the 27th of June. The ticket link is underneath this video. Tickets going fast. All the VIP tickets have sold out. Thank you all for getting involved. And thank you to Liam Carrigan and Lawrence Connolly for joining me on A Celtic State.